There is a garden outside Bird in Hand, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, that I have been thinking about since the first time I walked through it. Not because of what was growing in it, because of what was not. No aphids on the kale, no cucumber beetles on the squash, no cabbage worms on the brassicas, no spray bottles, no netting, no traps, no powders. I walked every row, and I could not find meaningful pest damage on a single plant. The garden was producing 45 varieties across roughly a third of an acre, and the family who runs it has not purchased a single pest control product in 3 generations. What I am going to share with you today costs nothing after the first season. It requires no chemicals, no manufactured inputs, and no ongoing effort beyond a decision made at planting time. But the part 1 want you to stay for, the thing I am going to share at the very end of this video, is the one piece of this system I have never seen written down anywhere outside of the community where I found it. If you leave before I get there, you are going to miss the piece that holds the entire system together. So stay with me. I want to tell you about a woman named Ruth. She is in her late 60s and tends about half an acre of kitchen garden outside Bird in Hand with her daughter and 2 grandchildren. The land has been worked by her family since her grandfather broke the first ground there in the 1920s. I spent 2 days with her family in the late summer of 2022, walking the beds, asking questions, taking notes. On the first morning, I noticed something that did not make sense to me. Her neighbors in the surrounding area, conventional farmers and homesteaders alike, were dealing with a heavy aphid season. I had seen it driving in, plants loaded with them. Yet Ruth's kale was clean. Her tomatoes were clean. Her beans were clean. I asked her what she sprayed. She looked at me the way you look at someone who is asked a perfectly reasonable question that reveals they have completely missed the point. She said she did not spray anything. Then she pointed at the edge of the bed. She said the plants handle it themselves. She just gives them the right neighbors. Here is what most people have been taught to think about garden pests. You get them, then you deal with them. You see aphids, you spray. You find beetle larvae, you pick them off or dust with something. The entire framework is reactive. Something goes wrong, you respond. Ruth's garden, and every Amish kitchen garden I have spent time in, operates on a completely different framework, one that is not reactive at all. The pest problem is never allowed to begin because the environment around the vegetables makes it almost impossible for pest insects to find them in the first place. The mechanism is called aromatic confusion, and the science behind it is not folk wisdom, it is documented entomology. Pest insects do not randomly land on plants and start eating. They navigate to host plants by detecting specific volatile chemical compounds those plants release into the air. A cabbage moth navigating across a garden is following a chemical trail emitted by brassicas. An aphid colony establishes itself on a plant after scout aphids locate it through the same chemical signal system. The entire process depends on the insect's ability to detect one specific smell in a relatively clean aromatic environment. What the Amish border system does is fill the air around every garden bed with so many competing aromatic signals that the pest insect's navigation system breaks down. It cannot isolate the signal it is looking for because it cannot hear it over the noise. The pest flies over the garden, cannot locate a target, and moves on. The vegetables are invisible to it, not because they have been removed, but because they have been hidden inside a wall of aromatic interference it cannot decode. Ruth builds that wall with 3 plants. Every single one of them self-seeds or spreads by root division, which means after the first year, they cost absolutely nothing. You establish them once, and they maintain themselves and multiply for free indefinitely. The first plant in her border is tansy, Tanacetum vulgare. It grows 24 to 36 inches tall, with flat-topped clusters of small yellow button flowers that bloom from midsummer through autumn. Tansy releases thujon and camphor from every part of the plant, compounds that are strongly repellent to aphids, Colorado potato beetles, squash bugs, and cucumber beetles. The Old Farmer's Almanac documents tansy as a companion plant along garden edges specifically for attracting beneficial insects while repelling a wide range of pests. Ruth plants it in a continuous strip along the north side of every bed, roughly 8 to 12 inches from the bed edge, spaced 18 inches apart. After the first season, it spreads by rhizome and fills the strip without replanting. In spring, she divides the outer edges and carries divisions to new beds. One plant, purchased or divided from a neighbor, becomes a permanent feature of every garden edge she tends. One warning about tansy that Ruth mentioned without prompting: do not plant it directly among your vegetables. In the bed itself, it is allelopathic, meaning it releases compounds from its roots that can suppress the growth of surrounding plants. It belongs at the border, outside the bed, 8 to 12 inches clearance between the tansy and your nearest vegetable. That clearance is the difference between using it correctly and creating a problem with it. The second plant is nasturtium, Tropiolum majus. This is where the system becomes layered in a way that most gardeners, even experienced ones, have not fully understood. Nasturtium is documented by multiple horticultural institutions as a deterrent to whiteflies, squash bugs, striped pumpkin beetles, and woolly aphids. But its primary function in Ruth's garden is not repellent, it is sacrificial. Ruth plants nasturtium on the south-facing edge of every bed, the warmest, most exposed edge, precisely because aphids find it more attractive than the vegetables behind it. The nasturtium draws aphid scouts away from the kale, away from the beans, away from the squash, and concentrates them on itself instead. In entomology, this is called a trap crop, and nasturtium is one of the most effective naturally occurring trap crops available to home gardeners. While the pest population is busy establishing itself on the nasturtium, something else is happening that I will get to in a moment. But first, the third plant, wormwood, Artemisia absinthium. A large, silvery-leafed perennial that grows into a substantial shrub 2 to 4 feet tall and equally wide. It releases artemisinin and thujone in concentrations high enough to repel virtually every flying insect pest that approaches it. Flea beetles, cabbage loopers, cabbage butterflies, black flea beetles. Research documented by Fawford Fine Earths confirms that wormwood specifically reduces damage by flea beetles, which attack eggplant, brassicas, tomatoes, and other common crops, and protects against cabbage loopers and cabbage butterflies. 2 warnings Ruth gave me about wormwood, and both matter. First, do not plant it near peas or beans. Wormwood's allelopathic compounds suppress legume growth significantly. Second, if you have cats or dogs that spend time in the garden, wormwood is toxic to both. Plant it at the perimeter of the garden, where animals do not typically roam. On the boundaries, away from foot traffic, wormwood is one of the most powerful aromatic deterrents available from a plant that self-seeds freely and costs nothing after the first planting. The 3-plant border creates a layered defense: tansy on the north, nasturtium on the south, acting as a sacrificial crop, wormwood at the corners and at any gap where the border meets a path or open ground. Walking between those 3 aromatic signals, a pest insect is navigating through interference on every frequency it uses to find food. Tansy is broadcasting one signal, wormwood is broadcasting another. The nasturtium is broadcasting a third and a fourth simultaneously. The vegetable in the center of all of this is effectively hidden inside a noise wall the pest cannot see through. I asked Ruth how long it took to establish the full border system on all her beds. She thought about it and said 2 seasons. The first season, she established the plants. The second season, they filled in, and the system was complete. From the 3rd season forward, she has not purchased a single pest control product, has not spent a single hour applying any treatment, and has not lost a meaningful yield to pest pressure in what she described as more years than she can clearly remember. Now, I promised you something at the beginning. The piece I have genuinely never seen written down outside of this community. The piece that makes everything I just described work at a level beyond what the 3 plants alone can achieve. Ruth has one comfrey plant at the corner of every garden bed. Symphytum officinalis, a large-leaved, deep-rooted perennial that spreads slowly from root division and, once established, is nearly impossible to remove. She does not eat it, she does not process it, she does not use it as mulch, though that is a valid use of it. She grows it specifically because of what it does to aphids. Comfrey is one of the most aphid-attractive plants in the temperate garden. When aphid scouts enter a garden environment, they preferentially locate and colonize comfrey over almost every vegetable crop. The comfrey becomes the first established aphid colony in the garden, a beacon that draws scouts toward it and away from the vegetables. That much alone would make it a useful trap crop addition to the nasturtium. But here is what Ruth understood that most gardeners who use comfrey as a trap crop miss entirely. An established aphid colony on a comfrey plant is a food source, and food sources attract predators. Within 1 to 2 weeks of aphids establishing on the comfrey at the corner of each bed, ladybugs find them, lacewings find them, parasitic wasps find them. These are the 3 most effective aphid predators in a temperate garden, and they are locating the comfrey colony through the same chemical navigation system that pest insects use to find host plants. The aphid colony on the comfrey becomes a nursery for the beneficial insect population that then spreads across the rest of the garden. The ladybugs that establish themselves on the comfrey to feed on aphids do not stay on the comfrey. They patrol. They find the aphids on the nasturtium at the south edge of the bed. They work along the tansy border, picking off the aphids that have collected there. The entire beneficial insect population of the garden self-organizes around the comfrey colony at the corner and works outward from it. Ruth is not introducing beneficial insects. She is giving them a reason to come and a food source that keeps them present all season. 1 comfrey plant at the corner of each bed. That is the piece I have never seen in a homesteading book. Trap crop plus beneficial insect nursery in a single plant that spreads on its own costs nothing after the first year and requires 0 management. The aphids on the comfrey are not a problem. They are the mechanism. Every pest gardener who pulls aphids off their comfrey or removes the plant when they see the colony has destroyed the one feature that makes the whole system work. There is a comment question I want you to answer before you leave. Have you ever tried companion planting for pest control and given up because it did not seem to work? Tell me in the comments, because I guarantee that if you tried it and it failed, one of 3 things was missing. The border was incomplete, the trap crop was removed when you saw pests on it, or the beneficial insect nursery was never established. Those 3 failures account for almost every companion planting disappointment I have heard described. I have put everything I documented from these families into one place, system by system, in the order they actually use it across the growing season. It is called the Gaia Lost Vault Complete Amish Healing and Gardening System. Link is in the description. Hit subscribe, because the next system I am pulling from these families is the soil amendment they have been making from kitchen waste for 200 years that outperforms every commercial compost product I have tested it against. It costs nothing. It takes 3 minutes to prepare, and the chemistry behind why it works is something that will completely change how you think about what your plants are actually hungry for. The air in Ruth's garden smells of tansy and wormwood and something sweet from the nasturtium flowers. The kale stands clean in the late August sun. The comfrey at the corner is covered in aphids, and above it, a cloud of ladybugs. She does not look at the aphids as a problem. She looks at them the way you look at bait on a hook. They are doing exactly what she put them there to do.